All the latest from Hong Kong as Hong Kong police have now arrested around 300 people for protesting against the delay in legislative elections. Chief Executive Carrie Lam had postponed the election citing COVID-19, a move that pro-democracy activists have criticized as politically motivated. The demonstrations were centered around Kowloon, with hundreds of protesters marching on the streets with placards and shouting slogans. Many of these chants have been outlawed by the new national security law, including the most popular one, Liberate Hong Kong. The police responded with an iron fist. Close to 1,000 officers were deployed in Kowloon to contain the protesters. They also fired multiple rounds of pepper balls at the crowd. 298 people have been arrested, most of them on charges of illegal gatherings. Under the new virus prevention laws in Hong Kong, mass gatherings have been outlawed. Some high-profile activists and former legislators were also arrested. The protests coincided with the previously scheduled date for the legislative polls.
As right now the protest is banned by the Hong Kong government. So we have to fight for the space to voice out what we care, what we want to talk about. So today is a very good moment, opportunity to express our feeling, express our want and thinking. So please care about the 12 people, their lives.
The election delay has come as a huge blow to pro-democracy activists. They were hoping to capitalize on the anti-China sentiments arising from the new national security law. But Carrie Lam decided to postpone the polls, citing the COVID-19 situation. The pro-democracy camp firmly believes that the polls were delayed so that pro-Beijing parties could avoid a drubbing at the electorate. Our correspondent Richard Kimber joins us live from Hong Kong for more details. Let's quickly go across to Richard. Richard, nearly 300 arrested, which is huge. What is the latest that you are learning about the status of these arrests?
Well, most of the arrests have been made because of illegal assembly. Basically, the fact that many protesters came out amid coronavirus social gathering restrictions that prevent gatherings of more than 2 people in any group. So that's really the motivation for the police coming and trying to stop this protest, which had not been given a permit because of those COVID restrictions. Many of the people arrested, though, saying that they feel aggrieved over this because there are other elements of Hong Kong society where COVID relaxations are being implemented by the government, and that because of this mass COVID testing program that's taking place right now, which is actually encouraging many members of the public to come out and meet in exactly the same locations where some of the voting would have taken place if the actual election was taking place. They say this kind of inconsistency on the part of the government is unacceptable and is a further reason why they're suspicious over the motivations behind delaying the election by a year. So it's really fueling the frustrations on the part of many protesters, which is why they came out on Sunday.
Right, it's interesting, Richard, that you mentioned the postponement of the elections. Yesterday's protests happened over the postponing of these key elections. Is the postponement not an indication of the government's worry that the opposition might gain an advantage?
Well, the government's been very clear in saying that this has nothing to do with political motivations. It's purely delaying the elections, as other countries have done, because of COVID concerns. The issue really here is the fact that, unique to Hong Kong, the pro-democracy groups gaining so much momentum against the government in a way that perhaps might not be occurring in other countries, and the fact that the election has been delayed by a year, and the fact, as I say, that the actual statistics for the COVID situation here is improving, and that the cases are now down to single digits on most days, which is really fueling the concerns and suspicions among anti-government voices here that this delay is unnecessarily long and is indeed unnecessary. So this all contributing to the sense overall that there's more protest action required in Hong Kong in order to keep up this momentum against the government.
All right. Also, Richard, last but not the least, anti-government demonstrations have declined this year, mainly because of the limits on group gatherings due to the pandemic. What will this mean for the Hong Kong pro-democracy movement at large?
Well, this is really the big question at the moment. Can there be any more protests if there are continued restrictions under COVID, and if the police, as they did on Sunday, come out in very large numbers as a preemptive move to try and prevent any kind of gathering on the part of the public? The answer to that is basically mostly that there will not likely be any large-scale protests, and nothing like we saw last year. The general mood on the street on Sunday, markedly different to the mood last year. Much less energy, much less optimism, much less fervour, really, with regards to this momentum, and much more effort to try and translate this street protest into a social media protest, and far more energy now taking place in Hong Kong to try and build an online following towards these protests, which is why you're starting to see many of these events that take place on the street appearing in international media because of the way they've been spread on social media in Hong Kong. So a big effort here to try and gain more international support in order to gain more international pressure on both the Hong Kong and Beijing governments.
We'll have to wait and watch how this this pressure works out in the long run. For now, thank you so much, Richard, for bringing us all those latest details.